You can feel completely bisexual on Monday, and by Friday, become convinced you've been lying to yourself for years. Nothing happened. Nobody exposed you. Your identity didn't suddenly collapse. Your attraction simply moved. Maybe men dominated your attention for months. Then, almost without warning, women become impossible to ignore. Or the reverse. And instead of thinking, my attraction shifted, your brain whispers something much more dangerous. So which version of me was fake? That's where the bisexual bicycle becomes more than changing attraction. It becomes an investigation into yourself. Every crush becomes evidence. Every fantasy becomes suspicious. Every person who catches your eye becomes another vote in an election that never ends. And eventually, you're not experiencing attraction anymore. You're measuring it. You notice who you look at first, who makes you nervous, who appears in your fantasies, who you imagine dating, who you search for online. Even who you don't notice becomes important. Because once identity becomes something you feel pressured to prove, absence starts feeling like evidence too. I haven't been attracted to a woman lately. What does that mean? I keep noticing men. What does that mean? I used to feel differently. What does that mean? Suddenly, desire has become surveillance. And this is where the bicycle becomes psychologically exhausting. Bisexuality is often imagined from the outside as perfect balance. Men and women, 50-50, permanent, predictable, as if bisexual attraction should sit perfectly still so everyone else can understand it. But attraction doesn't always behave like a percentage. Can become louder, quieter, more romantic, more sexual, more emotionally intense. Sometimes one direction can become so quiet that you struggle to remember what the attraction even felt like. And that's when the mind does something dangerous. It rewrites history. You remember an old crush. Was that actually attraction? You remember wanting someone. Was I forcing it? You remember a relationship. Did I really love them that way? The present starts interrogating the past. Because humans have trouble trusting emotions they can't currently access. If you don't feel something now, your brain can start wondering whether you ever truly felt it. Quietly, your memories become evidence. And that's especially brutal when you've already heard, you're confused. It's a phase. You'll choose eventually. You're actually gay. You're basically straight. You may reject those statements consciously, but hear them enough, and they can become an internal voice. So when attraction shifts, the shift doesn't arrive alone. It arrives carrying every accusation you've ever heard. Maybe they were right. That thought can destroy certainty incredibly fast. Because bisexuality has a strange visibility problem. Date another gender and people can read you as straight. Date the same gender and people can read you as gay. Your relationship becomes your identity in other people's eyes. So you learn that your internal reality can disappear behind whoever you're currently holding hands with. That creates a contradiction. You can be completely visible and still psychologically erased. Eventually, certainty starts feeling like protection. If you can become absolutely sure about your sexuality, maybe nobody can take it away from you. So you start checking. Dating apps become experiments. Social media becomes evidence. Pornography becomes evidence. Celebrity crushes become evidence. You scroll and quietly observe which gender produces the strongest reaction. Not because you're enjoying attraction. You're auditing it. And modern digital culture makes that worse. Dating apps ask you to define who you want. Algorithms learn what captures your attention. Profiles compress identity into labels. Online spaces reward identities that are immediately understandable. Everything wants you to become readable. The algorithm wants preference. Culture wants consistency. Your anxious mind wants certainty. But attraction sometimes gives you movement, and movement starts feeling like contradiction. That's the trap. You begin confusing consistency with authenticity. But here's where the psychology gets darker. Sometimes the distress isn't actually, my attraction changed. It's, what does this change mean? Those are different problems. You can spend months primarily attracted to men and become terrified that your attraction toward women disappeared. Then women suddenly dominate your attention again. Relief, finally. Until another thought arrives. Wait, what if I'm actually not attracted to men? The evidence reversed. The anxiety survived. That's the clue. Sometimes you're not searching for attraction. You're searching for certainty. And certainty can become addictive when your identity has repeatedly been questioned. So the cycle develops another layer. Attraction changes. You panic. You monitor. You collect evidence. You find reassurance. You relax. Then attraction changes again. And the investigation reopens. Attraction. Doubt. Proof. Relief. Doubt. Repeat. Eventually, you're watching yourself desire instead of simply desiring. You kiss someone and quietly check your reaction. Enough attraction? Enough excitement? Does this feel stronger than the last person? Would it feel different with another gender? Now you're simultaneously living the moment and standing outside yourself taking notes. That's emotional self-surveillance. And surveillance changes experience. The harder you monitor attraction, the less spontaneous it can feel. The less spontaneous it feels, the more suspicious you become. So you monitor harder. A perfect psychological loop. And relationships can intensify it. Imagine deeply loving a woman while entering a period of intense attraction toward men. Nothing necessarily changed about your love. Nothing necessarily changed about your commitment. But suddenly attraction toward men can feel enormous. Because that attraction isn't represented by just one attractive person. It can represent an entire unlived possibility. An entire category of experience. An entire future you aren't currently living. That makes ordinary attraction feel existential. And hookup culture makes this even harder. Modern dating teaches us that desire should be acted upon. Interested? Swipe. Curious? Explore. Uncertain? Keep looking. Something feels missing? Find another option. So instead of experiencing attraction as information, people start treating attraction as instruction. I feel this, therefore I must need this. But every attraction isn't a command. Every fantasy isn't an emergency. And every fluctuation doesn't mean your current life is fraudulent. Still, the mind wants reassurance. So maybe you search. Am I bisexual if I mostly like men? Am I bisexual if I haven't liked a woman in months? Am I bisexual if my attraction keeps changing? You find someone describing your exact experience. Instant relief. Finally. You feel legitimate again. Until the cycle turns. And suddenly you're searching again. Because reassurance doesn't always cure uncertainty. Sometimes it teaches your brain that uncertainty is dangerous enough to require reassurance. That's how identity becomes an obsession instead of a description. But there's another uncomfortable layer. Validation. Attraction doesn't exist in isolation. It exists alongside loneliness. Rejection. Novelty. tension, insecurity, desire. If one gender is giving you more attention, your emotional focus may intensify. If another has become associated with rejection, attraction can become tangled with avoidance or obsession. Dating apps amplify this because desire now exists inside an attention economy. You aren't only asking, "Who attracts me?" You're also experiencing, "Who chooses me?" And validation can feel remarkably similar to desire when loneliness becomes chronic. That doesn't make bisexuality fake. It means attraction exists inside psychology, like every other form of attraction. Yet, bisexual people are often expected to meet an impossible standard. Other people's attraction is allowed to be messy. Bisexual attraction is expected to testify in court. Equal attraction, consistent attraction, permanent attraction, provable attraction. But bisexuality doesn't require perfect symmetry. And perhaps the deepest damage begins when you believe it does. Because then your entire life becomes evidence. Your exes become evidence. Your fantasies become evidence. Your dating history becomes evidence. Your body becomes evidence. Your browser history becomes evidence. Even your confusion becomes evidence. Until eventually you're no longer asking, "Who am I attracted to?" You're asking, "What does my attraction prove about me?" And those are completely different questions. One allows desire to exist. The other puts desire on trial. That's the hidden psychology of the bicycle. It isn't always simply cycling between attractions. Sometimes it's cycling between attraction, interpretation, doubt, proof, relief, and doubt again. The attraction may move naturally. The exhaustion begins when every movement is forced to deliver a verdict. Because a feeling doesn't become fake when another feeling becomes louder. Complexity is not dishonesty. Fluctuation is not automatically confusion. Maybe bisexual people were never pressured only to pick a side. Maybe the deeper pressure was to remain psychologically identical every day just to be believed. And eventually that pressure gets internalized. Nobody has to question you anymore. You do it yourself. You become the investigator, the witness, the evidence, and the judge. Until you're no longer experiencing your sexuality, you're cross-examining it. Again. And again. And again. And maybe the most frightening question isn't, "Am I bisexual enough?" It's this, "When did every change in what I feel start making me question who I am?"